From Carry the Load, these are lessons from the front, stories of service and sacrifice from our military, veterans, first responders, and their families.
Welcome to another episode of Carry the Load's Lessons from the Front. I am your host, Todd Boeding, and I cannot wait to get right to it today. I've got a couple of individuals, one a very old dear friend, 25 years that I have known Jeff Opsitos.
Sure.
And I have today with him, this is going to be a unique one for me. First of all, I have to pronounce his name, and that is Frank Gulshad. And Frank, you were Jeff's interpreter, if I've understood it correctly, in Afghanistan. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'll get to you in a minute here, Jeff. But so, Frank, where are you originally from?
My father was from northern Pakistan. My mother's on the Turkish border with Iran.
Okay.
She's Iranian. I was born in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. And now I'm here in America.
Okay, so the family is Iranian and Pakistani, but you were born in Saudi and you ended up interpreting in Afghanistan.
Correct.
My Lord. Okay, well,
been all around. Explain all the languages.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that one here in a minute. So, and then Jeffrey Opsitos.
Sure.
So 25 years ago, you and I went to OCS, the basic school, infantry officer course, and I don't know that I saw you until about 2 months ago when I learned that you moved to the Dallas area.
Sure.
And you just recently retired as a full bird colonel.
Light colonel.
Was it a light colonel?
Light
Okay.
colonel. Yep.
Sorry, I was trying to promote you
It's
one
okay.
last time.
Yeah.
So as a lieutenant colonel, but you didn't have like a normal, I started, went all the way through and I stopped. You were prior enlisted, which that was like half of our OCS class, as I recall, we were prior enlisted.
Too many.
But then you got out for a little bit. What brought you back in?
Everybody, the grass is always not greener on the other side, right?
Right.
Proverbial. And, I felt like I was going to go out to corporate America. My wife was working at the time for KPMG Consulting.
Yep.
And she had a boss who was actually the CEO talk to me and give me the idea that I'm more marketable as a captain for my 30 years that I can give to corporate America, and I've already learned all my leadership that I can give, and it's time to get out and serve corporate America. Kind of a waving
You
of
fell
a hand.
for that?
I did. And as soon as you hit the ground after you depart the military for so long, and you realize that you're to your left and to your right is the young kids that have come through school. I was 6, 7, 8 years older than them, doing the same job. It was an eye opener because of they didn't necessarily walk the same ground that you and I had walked, and it was an eye opener for me that I really missed where I had come from and what made me the person that I was, and that was the military since age 17. So it was a long road to get back in. I had to take a lateral move. I lost, I was no longer an infantry officer. I had to transition over to ground intelligence, and it was easy to do that transition. However, it was a hard road to get back full time in order to go the full 20, if not longer, as an officer.
So what year was that, though, when you came back in?
So right around 2001, right when the wars were beginning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It was right after 9/11. So it was 9/11, probably 8 months or so afterwards. I took activation at that point. I was active reserve, and then just stayed active duty ever since.
So Frank, what was going on in your world in 2001? Where were you?
In 2001,
let's just call it this way. On 9/11, what did your world look like?
my world looked like I had just started a company, a paper company, about less than a year. And when the incident happened, it kind of shook everybody.
And was that here in the States?
Yeah, it was right here in the States. And It was actually my second paper company that I started.
How long had you been in the States when?
I've been in the States since 1978.
Okay. So
I was 15 when I came to the States.
perfect. Okay. So you were 15 years old when you come here. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, America is what you know. America is where your heart is. 9/11 happens. It probably affected you a little differently than a lot of people, I would imagine, as soon as all the details started coming out.
Yes.
Walk me through that a little bit.
It affects you differently because you, first of all, you're not a native born American, and people might look at you differently. Whether we like it or not, skin color still matters. Background still matters. Your accent still matters. And various other things matter. They shouldn't, but they do. So you have to be cautious. You're the people you went to school with, elementary school, middle school, junior high school. You know, some look at you differently as where you're from and what happened. Are you affiliated with them? Are you part of them? So, you know, it affects you deep emotionally. It does. Because immigrants are most, I would say, or if not all immigrants are more patriotic than a naturally born U.S. citizen.
I would agree with that.
Because you take things for granted.
Yeah. And I know that somebody listening to this would pipe in with, you know, they're not, come on, this is America. I mean, you're not more than I am. The reality is, and I had somebody that was working for me at one point. They were from Kenya, and they're swearing in for their citizenship. They gave everybody a rundown on all the things that that these people had to go through in order to become citizens. And I'm here to tell you, I mean, as a history guy, I bet you I didn't know as much as a lot of them had to learn in order to gain acceptance into this country. So that in and that kind of goes back to, the way we learned in the Marine Corps. I mean, I'm fond of saying that there are no better propagandists in this world than the Marine Corps. We are really, really good at tooting our own horn when we need to, but we do that through history, and we do that through the immersion in our Marine Corps culture. So I just wanted to jump in right away, Frank, and back you up on that, because I have absolutely seen that firsthand. So let's just kind of, get to the point where, you guys are traveling different paths. 9/11, Jeff, you were out.
No, I was at IOC. Teaching at IOC.
Oh, yeah.
Greeley and those guys, yeah.
Okay, so it was that's right. You were at IOC on 9/11. Okay. So Frank, you're in the paper business at that point.
Yeah,
you're just living the American dream, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So 9/11 happens. Then when did you get over to Afghanistan, and how did you get to Afghanistan?
So the time that we met in Afghanistan was 2009. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was sometime after. My first tour in Afghanistan was in 03, right when we first opened the embassy there in Kabul. I had India 3-6 at the time, and then came back and went through the transition period. Went over to my new job. Went through some training for that, and then by the time 2009 rolled around, I was with newly formed MARSOC at the time.
Okay.
Yep. And I was...
And we've got another classmate that traveled that world.
Yeah, Mr. Galvin.
Yeah. Fred Galvin will be one of our guests here before too long.
I'll watch that podcast.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. He's a good man.
Yes.
So went through MARSOC, and we stood it up, and what we were doing at the time, we were sending out individual augmentees to some of the different special forces out there. In this case, I went over with the Army Special Forces into Afghanistan.
Frank, what was your journey from 9/11 to
2000.
meeting Jeff in 2009?
Like I'd mentioned, I had just started a business, and it was tumultuous times, but worked hard and made it grow, and just stayed at it. Worked diligently till grew the company to a considerable size, and then got an offer for a buyout at 2005 from one of our clients. I refused the offer. Then about a year later, they came back with another offer, and then I accepted the offer, and I sold the company to a client which is a part of a national group. And I was idle for about 6, maybe 7 months, and just thinking what to do next. And this opportunity came up as to, go serve the country. And it sounded very far and distant, and I didn't know what it was about. So I applied, and thank God I got accepted, and went through quite a few rigorous tests, passed the test, and then ended up in Afghanistan.
So when you say you got this opportunity, what was specifically the opportunity?
The opportunity was, a friend of mine had told me that since I speak a few different languages. He said, you have this ability. Why don't you go serve? And I said, I would like to serve, but I've never spent 1 minute anywhere. So
it was just kind of a networking type conversation.
Exactly. So he said, I will give you a reference to call. I called this recruiter for this company, and then she pretty much straightened out the whole thing for me, how the process works, what to do, what not to do. And then it took a while. It took a good while to get background check. I mean, they did a thorough background check. The FBI was over few times. They do a good thorough check for your SF-86, and then when you're applying for your clearances, various different clearances, and then fortunately they all happen fairly quickly.
Are you at liberty to say what kind of clearance you had to get?
I had to get TS and SCI, top secret and SCI.
Okay. And so when you say quantify how long it took, from the time you made that phone call and said I'm interested, and you filled out the paperwork to show them, months. Okay.
Months of rigorous back and forth. But it was just all procedure, one step after another step after it. And I had traveled extensively throughout my business. I traveled to Asia quite a few times.
So they had to dig in deep.
I have probably 9 passports. Each one has probably 100+ stamps, maybe more.
Jeez.
So they had to know each and every stopover, whether it was a transit. If it was transit, if it was more than an hour or two. Did I talk to anybody? Can I remember when it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago? And I'm probably undercutting it. I probably have about 1,000 entries, different places. So they wanted to know all of that. My SF-86 was good 2.5, 3 inches thick.
I'm proud to say mine wasn't that thick.
And then it was mostly Asia, mostly all China, Taiwan, and back and forth, because I did paper business with them and machinery on Afghanistan.
So when did you enter into Afghanistan?
2009.
Okay. So is this
time frame? Now we're linking up.
Okay, so now we're linking up. So you were, dare I say, each is first. That
I'd like to.
I don't know how else to say it.
So the story kind of goes, and again, I think we sometimes try to remember exactly what was there. As I was on the border, near the Khyber Pass, border of Afghanistan, Pakistan, pretty big transit point. And we had our teams that were there, and interpreters come and go. Some of them are just local, trusted, that'll just be nothing more than a quick dialogue. But when you receive a U.S. terp, affectionately called, it's different, right? So they go through a process much like what Frank was just talking about, and So we were there, and Frank showed up, and immediately, like Frank said, I mean, sometimes we put folks through a certain lens, and here comes Frank, and you're waiting for the dialect, you're waiting for the the third. And he comes in, and you could hear from him now. He sounds like a California guy, right?
Yeah.
So in comes Frank. He's like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And immediately we hit it off because knowing that he has the trust of the U.S. government, he's gone through all the process of clearances and such. Immediately, he's an asset.
Mm-hmm.
He's an asset to the teams. He's an asset to everything, and he certainly was a blessing for us to receive at the time because he does, and I think he undercut himself. He speaks 7 languages with a whole bunch of different dialects for each one. So, again, there was times that I had Pakistanis here, Afghanis here, and then the dialect that each one of those cultures can go through, folks can go through. Frank was just dialing them in, listening to each one of the conversations, and sometimes, folks would switch over, and Frank would jump right in and switch either with them or leave it unknown that he was listening into the transition. So
yeah,
again,
that was probably
huge asset.
your greatest
Asset,
capability,
yeah.
asset as an asset, was to listen in when they didn't think.
It actually was, and it came naturally because my mother, when she married my father, didn't speak his language. My father was an engineer. He worked for an hydroelectric dam company out of England, and he was a structural engineer. They were stationed in Iran to build a dam, and it's like a Hollywood movie. They were in a mountainside building this dam in a gorge where he met my mother. He'd seen her once, like one of those old fairy tale movies. He never knew who she was, and he didn't know where she came from, but he pursued her, and then they got married. And then my oldest brother was born in Iran.
So your dad was from Pakistan.
Yeah.
Your mom was from Iran.
Uh-huh.
So explain. I mean, to the average redneck like me, you look at those countries and you're like, well, they're not too far apart, and it's all Middle East, or it's all that they all speak the same language. And like you were saying, Jeff, 7 different languages, and there's multiple dialects for each one.
Yeah.
Give everybody, a quick hit on how different these languages can be when they might sound exactly the same to guys like us.
They're actually quite different. They're as different as you can get. Good for me, I had an advantage because, like I was saying, my mother, in our house, we spoke 4 different languages automatically. My mother spoke one, so it's her mother tongue. We speak that. My father spoke one, it's his tongue, so we spoke that with him. It's automatically when you're talking to your mother, back and forth, 4-way conversation. So this is one language, this is another language. You're visiting. We don't want to be rude. If you don't speak this, we speak to you in your language. You're visiting. You don't speak either one of these, so we speak to you in this language, and a couple other ones. So this was automatic, and so it came very naturally to do that.
How'd you throw some teenage girls in there, and who knows what's going to happen now?
Right.
A completely new language. So, okay, so you guys start working together, and like you said, Jeff, you immediately hit it off. There had to have been a big challenge, though, in some way meshing. I mean, obviously, you gave me some insight into what really stood out in a positive way, but there had to have been some challenges, some friction there to, just to get on the same page. Was there anything like that, or was there just a natural mesh?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it definitely depends on the individual. Frank came to us with, we were in an arduous environment. I mean, it was difficult. I mean, we were all wearing, local clothes. We had all, relaxed grooming standards and such, and it was just a place where, things were happening. And we know how to protect each other based on our training, within the military. And, when you receive your assets, your interpreters and such within, you need to bring them in because you need to protect them, right? And in that case, that first couple weeks of assimilation with having our new joins coming into the unit, it was important to show Frank the ropes. Okay, understand what's right, what's wrong, when to smoke, when not to smoke, when to talk, when to stand behind somebody, when to not have to interpret everything, or if because at times you want to say everything. The interpreters want to translate everything over to the individual. Sometimes we need a caveat, and say, hey, you don't need to say it like that, or this is between you and I. And it was just a learning curve, right? It was one of those things that we just kind of went through, and immediately, like I had said, we bonded pretty quick because of not only the environment we were in, but because of Frank's affable nature. Just immediately, he's a super kind, super nice man that was able to just bond with everybody. He had this ability through probably the multiple different cultures that he had been exposed to throughout his entire life to just blend right in. And the military is a different culture. It's not easy to get into it.
Sure.
And especially in that type of environment where everybody's antennas are up and everybody's on guard, looking for, the next event to occur. Frank learned very quickly, and that was very helpful. We didn't have to worry about whether he was going to be a indicator or some type of, detriment to the unit or cause some type of incident.
It was a lifetime experience, and I loved every minute of it. And if I could go back, I would go back in 1 second.
Really?
I would go back right now, leave everything and go and serve. I was very, very, it was emotional for me because nobody in my family has ever been in the military. So, and the military is a tight-knit group,
Mm-hmm.
but once you go inside and you see everybody, and the amount of talent, the sheer amount of talent and just wisdom I saw, not just through our unit, throughout the whole system, I was very impressed. I was lucky. I mean, I was enjoying myself. I was serving, and it was probably one of the best times in my whole life. 2 years of best time.
But surely you found yourself in a position at some point where you're like, what in the world did I sign on for?
There were times we were in a hot zone. We got incoming quite a few often. We have nighttime rounds flying around, tracers. They're shooting over this mountain, that mountain, rounds coming in, explosion outside. It was hot. It was just rock and roll all the time, but it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably never been through any training.
I had a hard time learning some of the insignias for some of the uniforms they gave us. They give you a pamphlet to learn these are the ranks and this and that. And that was the hardest thing.
That was harder to learn than the language.
I couldn't get those. Anything else, it was okay. That was just difficult.
So obviously you're an audio learner, not a visual learner.
Correct.
So tell me about one of those times where you're sitting there and you're going, I don't know that I made the right decision. Why on earth am I here right now?
I don't think there are a lot of incidents like that. I'm a man of God. I believe in God, and I believe in destiny. And then there were times that we would go out on the field, and then you need to have your whole gear on and your vests, and you have to have the plates.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I would leave the plates out. And then my colleagues would say, you need to have that. That's for your own safety. I said, I believe in destiny. I mean, I might be going a little bit too far. But look, if I'm meant to die, a bullet's going to come and hit me in the head. It's going to miss the chest. So I'm not going to wear the thing. Sometimes I wore the plates.
I don't know that would have gone over too well in most commands I was in.
Exactly, right. So that's what I was thinking as he was telling the story. I could remember him, and now I didn't remember that. I'm glad he brought that up, is him taking his SAPI plates out. And us realizing, because, you do the check.
Okay.
And make sure everybody the plates are in, and Frank didn't have his in. We're like, where's your SAPI plates? And what would you say? Inshallah.
I would say I forgot, and the next time I'm going to put them in.
That's right.
But it was very interesting. I loved every moment of it. The whole aspect of just signing up, going through the ordeal of getting qualified, and then the actual movement, going to basic training here for like a week or two, getting all your gear, your 100 and 200 pounds of gear, and hauling it in and going to the base and staying at the base and flying to all halfways, and then ending up in Afghanistan. The first time you land, you're like you're wore out, and you're looking at this vast place. It's new. You don't know who you are, where you're going, but it was interesting. And I got deployed. I mean, I ended up in Bagram, and probably within 36, less than 30, probably 24 hours, I was at my post.
Which is where y'all met initially.
Yes.
Right? Jeff, when you were over there, what did you see that really stuck with you? What did you experience that stuck with you to this day? Something that you just look at and go, you either shake your head or you smile. I mean, I want to hear about one of the experiences that really sticks with you.
So there was a village there that had a lot of transit activity going on. In fact, we felt like there was maybe even some fighters that were being coming across. In order to win the hearts and minds, if you will, of them, you find something that they need, something that the village needs. And I think it was the saddest thing, but turned into a positive, is that they needed water, running water. They didn't have
something
anything
we just absolutely take for granted here.
Right. So any type of water, even if it was going to come off the hillside, the mountain, we built them a concrete cistern and allowed for that water to collect and run down. We piped it into the village, even with the very simple, methods to bring it in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have given them the Empire State Building at that point, because the way in which they then at that point looked at you as bringing in water, so they no longer had to send up the children or the ladies up to the hill with the buckets and carry it back down. I'm sure that process took forever. We won the hearts and minds of them, and in turn,
I mean, it's just all you're doing is that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs right there, and you fulfilled one of those basic needs.
So and so the what really stands out to me though is that in winning those hearts and minds, we've also adopted that village, and we were able to reach back to the United States and have care packages made and sent to us. Remember, we put all those together, and we went out and delivered them. It was nothing more than writing utensils, coloring books, different things like that they can use in their schools. And they had little schools there that they would use that to teach in. And then we gave some stuff to the older folks as well, clothing items and things that were donated, shoes. Of course, they need shoes. That was just heartwarming, right? That was. I don't want to focus on all the negative and the gore and such that what took place over there, but that was more uplifting, more heartwarming, and then have obviously Frank involved in that and helping deliver those goods to the children, and then having the pictures to send home to all the churches and everybody that had donated. Those become part of the wall, and they hang it up, and it was pretty heartwarming.
Oh, and that's,
to say the least.
When the United States has gone to war traditionally, I think we've always tried to. Let me rephrase that. When the United States has been in war traditionally, there's always been an appeal back to the civilian community to participate in that war. And of course, World War II, is the one war where I think we got it right for the vast majority. So when you send that back to, the churches, you're showing them they're making a positive impact, and that makes them feel a part of it. Now, my big question though would be, you made reference to the looked like there had been some, there were some younger fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to hold on to their hearts and minds, or did fear come back into play?
Well, I think that the fighters that we were identifying weren't necessarily there at the village. They were off doing what they were doing. Our hopes were that they would be weeded out and
Mm-hmm.
identified to us on our other engagements at that time, or told to not come around. This isn't a village that's welcoming to them. I mean, it was all the idea that would be something that they would take care of, right? They would take care of the problem. Now, of course, identifying key individuals that we may have been looking for, key fighters, that was important to us. So it was networking. It was building that intelligence picture for what may have been happening in those locations.
So the cynic though would look at that and say, you're really kind of putting those people in a difficult spot though, because you're giving them basic sustenance.
Mm-hmm.
You're You're appealing to them emotionally, as you stated, winning their hearts and minds, which you absolutely need when it's all said and done. But now all of a sudden they're kind of in a little bit of a quandary because, while we're not going to go after them physically and violently, the people that we were fighting absolutely would if they knew that.
Sure. Happens all the time.
So, that you adopted that village, but that's what I'm saying, were you able to hold on to them?
I think the notion that you will never be able to protect everyone at all times. You have the anticipation that they're going to be able to, protect themselves in a certain way. I mean, but that doesn't mean that they're going to pick up arms and fight for the cause. And I think that that's happened in both Iraq as well as Afghanistan. That the folks that we've made friends with, and I think you would, in your cynic view of that, would say that we've used them to perform a certain
right
function for us. Sure, it can be viewed that way, and I don't like to think that would be the case, and of course the cynics would think that. However, I think for the time period that we were there, we protected them and did everything we could to ensure their safety. That doesn't mean that when we left, and that will actually lead to a good story of something for Frank and I, is when you leave, Taliban or others come in and
they backfill it.
Well, they backfill it and find out who were the supporters. And in fact, that was one of the situations that kept us in touch over the years between 2009 and where we've recently come back together. Was we had a Afghanistan company, but not in the way in which we would think company, but more so construction guy, a guy that owned a bulldozer, right? And we had HESCO walls that we were putting in. HESCOs are steel barriers, not steel barriers, but meshed barriers with like felt that goes up the side, and you have to dump rocks and stuff inside, and it acts as a wall, and you stack them on top of each other. He had the bulldozer that would allow for that. His name was Sadiqullah. We have pictures with him, and it was just a great guy, great supporter of what we had going on, and of course he was being paid to load dirt into our HESCO walls, but he was a good person all around.
So let's actually stop right there and kind of tease everybody with the rest of that, and let's take a quick break. And I want to hear about the rest of this story because it sounds like there's a lot more to it. So let's take a quick break.
We pause to ask, who are you carrying this Memorial Day? Carry the Load provides an active way to connect you to the sacrifices of our military, veterans, first responders, and their families. Our Memorial May events help bring awareness and raise funds while we march to restore the true meaning of Memorial Day. Whether you walk with us on our 48-state national relay, attend the Dallas Memorial March Memorial Day weekend, or carry it anywhere in your community, join Carry the Load and thousands of participants nationwide as we work to honor and remember the sacrifices made for our freedom. For more on how you can join this grassroots movement, visit carrytheload.org/Memorial May.
I want to go back to, you were talking about Sadiq a minute ago. So let's talk about Sadiq and why you still remember Sadiq at this point.
Sadiq, young guy, construction worker, had a bulldozer that, as I had mentioned, was supporting our forward operating base where we were building some HESCO walls. Sadiq was a young guy, young 20-some, and he was just very, very helpful, very kind. Spoke some English as well. So
and he was from Afghanistan.
He was from Afghanistan, okay. Right? Yeah, mm-hmm. From Kabul, I think.
Correct.
Yeah. And he was just, again, he was there every day and just helping us do what we needed to do to build the camp up, and actually to the point of where we were building some outposts onto the mountains, which we actually had to have mules pack load the material up to the top of the hill, and Sadiqullah would actually go up there with us. Sadiq would go up with us and help us, build the walls and make sure everything was somewhat safe, or construction sound. Yeah, sound construction.
Okay.
So again, we hit it off, and we really liked him a lot, and wanted to make sure that he was safe. Back to the whole safety thing, and those that help you, you want to protect them and not allow them to go a different direction. So.
And so.
Yep.
Whatever happened to him?
So interesting. So I departed Afghanistan in 2010, early spring, time frame. And you weren't sure. You were shortly thereafter, right? You were April, May time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Frank was there a little bit longer. So it was maybe a year or two later that Frank sent me an email, and then it followed up with a phone call, which was completely strange. I was in Germany at the time. I was working for Africa Command.
Okay.
And basically said Sadiq was in trouble. And this is, one of those things that you just don't even think about. You just do it, and you just help out whoever you can. And certainly for Sadiq, I had to arrange for his extraction. There were some special force units that were there, forces units that we made contact with and had them arrange for a link up with Sadiq.
Okay.
Now, the reason being is because Sadiq was and his entire family was under the threat, and the Taliban were looking for him for what he had done in support of the U.S. So we were able to, Frank and I, through the communications, Frank back to Sadiq, Sadiq to Frank to me, arrange for that extraction of Sadiq and his family to at least a safe location, whether it was in Afghanistan or I think Sadiq made it out of the country and his wife and young kid was safe.
Yes.
At the time.
Okay.
At the time.
So at the time, all right. So we're gonna. I want to drill down a little deeper here, but what you're saying is that. Okay, so Sadiq reaches out to you, Frank.
Right.
Frank, you reach out to you, Jeff, and then are you at this point going to the command and saying, "Hey, we've got a friendly who is in danger"? It was
the danger call. I think at that. I mean, absolutely, and I think.
So it was that, but I mean, was that pretty normal at that point? Because
I don't think so. I don't want to say I abused anything in getting this action to occur. I just felt pretty strongly that Sadiq had done some really good things for us, and it was unfair that he was then being targeted because of that. So I had pulled some strings, and our boss at the time was a full bird Army SF colonel.
Okay.
Had a lot of pull, knew a lot of folks, and was able to arrange for his extraction.
Okay.
Through those units. Probably not normal at all. No conventional units, I don't believe, would take on that particular mission. And it was just through connections through those.
Those are the things you don't read about and hear about very often. I mean,
Correct.
and that's where. I, for one, as a citizen, get really, really miffed at the media. I get really miffed at the politicians for focusing on all the negatives. And you know what? I mean, we've done some things that we shouldn't do. We've made some mistakes in the military, but then I hear about something like that, and it's like there's a human factor there that. Why is that not, heard and celebrated more often? So I'm going to shut up and turn it back to you and keep going. What happened?
So. We were able to arrange for his extraction, and then we lost.
We lost touch.
Yeah, lost touch. Right. So Sadiq, at that point, we couldn't tell you whether he survived or whether we heard that he was safe, and that was the last that we heard. And then I think it was 3 or 4 years later that he had reached out to you, and he popped up in Italy. Or did you arrange for him to go to Italy?
No, he somehow managed to make himself all the way up to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
How, I don't know. And
so you don't even know where he was extracted.
After his
you just got word back that it was a
safe. It was
successful
safe.
mission.
He was safe.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he just went off radar.
Yep.
Because we had him on some of the social websites. He just totally went off radar. 4 or 5 years later, he sent me I wouldn't get any response from any email or anything from him. So he sent me an email. I was surprised to get an email from him. He said he'd made it to Italy, and his family is in hiding still.
Yeah.
And he would like to know whether if there's anything,
U.S. program to
any U.S.
get him a
program
visa.
that he could probably somehow come to U.S. And I said I would follow up, which we did. And then there was this SIV program that was kind
Special
of
immigrant.
somewhat tedious, but he was in the process of that.
Yeah, this is the same. This SIV program, same program
Yep.
when we withdrew completely from Afghanistan that
Mhm.
everybody was talking about.
Very
Correct.
similar, yeah.
Yeah.
So Frank reached out to me again and had said, "Hey, Sadiq is safe. I heard from him. He's back on the radar, and he is looking to. He needs validation of what he did. Essentially, that he did work for the U.S. Government in Afghanistan to basically strengthen his package, his special immigrant visa package for it. At the time, I was I was the defense attaché working on the embassy in the Dominican Republic. So I had the backing of the State Department at that point, and I was the DAT. I was the defense attaché.
That's a good backing to have.
Good backing to have, especially in that case. I was able to generate on some good letterhead with my signature, a letter that I think served him well. Right, I think he was able to push forward with that process. Now, I believe that was immediately successful. I'm not certain what tripped him up on it, but recently, within the year, he's come back online, especially since the pullout of Afghanistan. I think he's trying to bring his family out. He's still in Italy. He's trying to bring his wife and kids out. And
So are his wife and kids
again.
still in Afghanistan?
I believe.
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, that can't be safe because they'll use
Right.
use them to get to him. So when was the last time you talked to him?
Probably about a year ago, I would say 10 months.
Maybe a little bit more. No,
Yeah.
a little bit less. I think.
8-10 months.
Yeah.
So do you think somebody like Sadiq feels somewhat betrayed by how we've pulled out of the country? I don't want to say made it difficult, but it hasn't. It's certainly not easy for him to.
Correct. Survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, to maintain life. That's a good question. As a human being, I think there probably is some animosity there. Whether it's one of those, you do your damn, you don't do your damn. I mean, he didn't do anything. He just had a bulldozer and made a retaining wall. Now his life is in jeopardy just because of that.
So what's the answer on something like that?
It's a very good question. I don't think, and there's a true definite answer for that. It is what it is. It's sad. There's a lot of good people there.
Yeah, there's no one answer.
Yeah.
I think that there's many good people that are there that you just can't bring them all home. You can't bring them all to a new place. You try to make their place better, and you make the realization that country will always be like that country is.
Mm-hmm.
And no one has ever successfully led from Kabul. It's just very difficult, as Frank was pointing out. The north, the south, the east, and west, they are all culturally different. And there's no way that you can
clash.
Yeah, you just cannot bring it all together.
Constant.
Who said that? It was a great little vignette for Afghanistan. Is if brothers are fighting brothers. If brothers aren't fighting brothers, they're fighting their cousins. And if they're not fighting their cousins, they're fighting the village next to them. Okay, and then if the villages aren't fighting, then they're fighting the provinces. And then if they're invaded, then they all join together and they fight the invaders.
Until the invaders
Until the invaders leave. And then they go back to fighting the provinces, to the villages, to the cousins and brothers, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Down to back to his brother.
So is it a safe conclusion to say it's just a warring culture?
I would hate to say that, but that's exactly what it is. And I believe the only way it's going to cure itself is within time. Give it a century. Give it a century or two. Let some new blood come in. The 2, 3, 4 generations go by, maybe. Yes. Other than that, it's a beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
It is vastly, vastly full of resources.
That's interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard Afghanistan described as a beautiful country.
It's a beautiful country. They
Really?
have really beautiful spots.
Lush
There's
valleys and
rivers,
mountains.
there's mountains, there's valleys.
Well,
There-
then why?
There's so many resources.
Then why
Jeff
are
and
people
I,
put in a village
we
in
were
a place
just-
where there's no water?
Right. I mean, well, they have to live somewhere. There's no now. It's not a metroplex. I mean, there's no infrastructure as what you and I would think. So Kabul and,
Right.
and other places like that are going to have some buildings. Back in the 70s, they were very modern.
Oh yeah, real modern.
Yeah, but still, the outskirts, the villages are just it's dirt poor.
And I cut you off, Frank. I'm sorry. Please continue.
It is a beautiful country. Even with all the infighting amongst themselves, there's this this warmth and hospitality mostly in the Pashtun, if I think you
very
would
warm.
agree. They have this brotherly feeling. If they connect with you, doesn't matter if you're from there or not, or you're a foreigner. If you become close to them like a brother, they call you family, then you become their family for life. And they are willing to sacrifice for themselves for that. So that bond is very, very strong, and it's very, very thick. That's one of the beauties of that region. Other than that, it is vastly full of natural resources. It's just mind-boggling. We had this outpost in our backyard, I would rather say, which was on the top of a mountain. And it was an outpost that was stationed for 2 weeks at a time. So it would rotate. 2 people would stay there for 2 weeks, and then they would come back and they would rotate. In order to supply those guys, we had contracted some mule handlers, I would say. There were quite a few of them. These were vetted. And this one particular gentleman had 2 mules, a younger one and an older one. And very interesting. One day, I believe it was 4th of July, we had to walk up to the post. Everybody from our group team had to walk up to the post, which took quite a few hours. And then this gentleman had to carry a load for the next 2 weeks. And I happened to be with our colonel. And Jeff had left with a couple other guys walking up the trail to go up to the mountain.
And how far was this distance?
This distance was, I would say, for a mule walk, probably 5-6 hours.
Oh my!
Yeah, it's a good. You're going
It's a switchback. So
Yeah,
it's the
it's
top
a-
of
Okay.
a mountain, and the switchback goes back and forth up
Yeah.
to the top.
up to the
Okay.
top,
Takes upwards of about
all
4
the
or
way
5
to
hours
the
get
top
there.
of that mountain.
And you were already ahead of them at this point.
We were already heading up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I decided to stay back with the colonel because there was nobody left back there. So the colonel and I, we just sat at the bottom at the base, right when they were started leaving. We made a little camp. We sat there with the mule guy, and he's loading up his mule. And
And I'm sorry to have missed this one as well.
yeah.
This,
we
is,
were playing.
this is one I've heard many times, and I'm going
We
to
were
tell you I'm
playing
sorry I
Scrabble.
missed it.
Colonel and I got into a big heavy duty Scrabble game, and we were throwing these weird words that were not even in the dictionary. That's a word, and I'm not, no, this is a word. So, and then the mule carrier comes over. He said, "I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So he starts talking, and he said, "I want you to translate for me to your boss." I said, "That's a colonel." He said, "Okay, colonel. That I get paid such and such. It's a very small amount. And, I have to buy feed for the mule, and I have to buy feed for my children, and I have to do this. And I have 2 mules, you give me so much, and I have to do this, and I get this ration, I have to take it up. This particular mule, number 1, is a young one. He's okay. But this particular mule is very old, and I can't afford another one because mules are very expensive. So I have to entice it to go up to the mountain." I said, "Okay, how do you entice it?" He said, "Well, you know about Afghan people." I said, "Yeah, I have heard about Afghan people." He said, "Okay, what we do, what one thing we like is smoking hash." I don't know if I have a lot to say there.
Sure.
So he pulls out this thing like the size of an egg, big old black thing. He said, "This is what we see. This is very good stuff. You want to?" He's holding it like this, showing it to the colonel. Colonel's shaking his head. He thinks he knows what it is, but he's waiting for somebody. He asked me, "What is that?" I told him, "Sir, it's narcotics." He said, "No, what do you mean narcotics?" I said, "It's hash to be exact." He said, "Why is this guy showing us this?" He said, "Well, there's a little story behind it." So I told him the story. He said, "I'll make it short. This old mule won't go up the mountain until I get him high." Because I put a lot of weight on him and he doesn't go. I can beat him to death. He won't move. I get him high. Hash is expensive. Either buy me a new young mule or give me extra money so I can buy more hash. And this is how I'll do it. And I'm translating the colonel.
Hold on. Is the colonel thinking,
and the colonel,
this guy's trying to...
The colonel is just shaking his head, and he's just almost ready to start laughing. He's asking me, is this guy fooling us? I said, "No, sir, he's telling you the truth." He said, "No, I swear on my father's grave, on my grandfather's grave, all that." I said, "Okay, then how do you get him? How do you get a mule high?" He pulls out a big garbage bag, and he puts it over his head, and he puts it over the mule's head, and he takes a little thing that he's burning. He said, "Watch this. I'm not even going to waste it." So he's inside this garbage bag for a good minute, 45, 2 minutes. And then he takes the bag out, big old cloud
of smoke
comes out, and they're both happy. He said, "See, now he will go and he will have no problem going. But this costs money. So if either increase my salary for $150, $200 or buy me another mule."
That's the fuel.
That's the fuel. And then he says, "Well, this is very good. I just got this and it's a very good batch. Would you like to try some?" He's asking the colonel if you would like to partake. The colonel said, "No, I'm okay." So this was a very interesting story.
And so he made it up there. It may have taken him a couple hours longer, but
yeah.
High octane.
He made it up.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical.
Yeah.
So it's a country of you do what you got to do to get it done.
Yeah.
Survival.
Yeah.
I'll be darned. So seriously, how long did it take the mule to get up there?
Probably 4 or 5 hours.
He ran the first 30 minutes. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Very interesting.
All right. So you guys left out of there not too long, or not too far apart,
Mm-hmm.
and you've stayed in touch this entire time, or did you just come back together? I mean, how did you hatch this whole idea about going into business together?
Right.
We were on the
hills of Afghanistan.
Yeah, we were on a post. At the post we had built right in our backyard, the mules, and we actually did a couple of helicopter drops for that place too. It used to be an old outpost. We built the walls, did some perimeter sandbagging, and made it a little bit more stable. We were sitting there, and Jeff asked me, he said, "Tell me about what you used to do." So I kind of briefly told him what I used to do. And I told him it's
So I'm going to take the story from there, Frank.
yeah. Okay.
So we're there on the post, and I tell a story with color, and I say, "Hey, we were drunk on tea because we were drinking green tea and just enjoying the stars and doing whatever." But it's small talk when you're alone up there and you're very few folks. You find yourself in like a solitude state, and in that case, you share some stories. In this case, I wanted to hear about Frank. Frank, tell me about what you've done. He says, "I convert paper." You convert paper. What does that mean? And now I find out, he's well off, right? And I'm even liking him because he's even more. He's supporting his country because he just sold his last business and he came over to do interpretation. Didn't need a penny to go do it. So he tells me about this paper converting, that he takes these big raw parent rolls of paper and converts them into toilet paper and hand towels and different things that we would find, Todd, you and I would find in the commercial bathroom. Anywhere from the big toilet rolls that you see in the stalls, right, or the ones you pull out of the thing next to the sink. So he was telling me about this, and I'm a Marine, major at the time. I'm like, that's great. Okay, toilet paper. Sounds great. He's like, no, it's a commodity. And right, this is the first time he's really kind of hit home. He's like, no, you got to understand, this stuff is used by everybody, and it's a business that really is recession proof because everybody needs toilet paper. Everybody needs paper
Not
towels.
COVID proof though.
Not COVID proof, no. But those hand dryers that blow hot air are gone now because they create problems. Anyway, so when he told me about this story in this business, I said, well, that's really interesting. So tell me more about it. So he just told me about how the machines work, what they do, how that whole process is, and where the market is from Asia to where it is in the U.S. and his businesses he had in California and how that's all gone. I said, that's really interesting. I said, it's great. I still had years left to retire. Come out of Afghanistan and fast forward, the years that we've stayed in touch through the Sadiq issue and others. I retired in August of 17, and any retiree normally takes their first job contracting for the government in some way, and that's exactly what I did. So Frank stayed in touch via Facebook and other means, and had mentioned to me that, hey, remember we talked about paper? I said, I do. He said, I think I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to go to Texas. I said, what are you going to do in Texas? He said, no, I want to open up a business. He said, and we always had these ideas. Remember, sitting there, we were going to open up a security consulting business. That was going to be the niche between the military and all the languages they speak. We were going to provide, almost like I don't want to say Blackwater, but that type of, service to the government. Yeah, it was Hog, because we had another member at the time. It was Opsitos Gulshad, but Hog was Hubs. Hubs Opsitos Gulshad. Hog was going to be the name of the company. And he basically got back to me and said, hey, we don't have Hog anymore. He said, so how about Og? I said, that doesn't work. How about Go? Right? And Gulshad Opsitos, okay? And a lot of it was just laughing. We're like, oh, well, we'll do a business. And the first chapter will sound like on the hills of Afghanistan, the dusty hills of Afghanistan. Here we are with the idea. And wouldn't you know it, that idea is now in place here in Dallas. Gulshad Opsitos is known as Go Paper Industries. And we just formed a company. We opened it in September. We have 2 converting lines that this engineer sitting next to me designs and makes himself. I made him from overseas, and we got him now sitting in our facility, and we're producing paper for the Dallas area. So the idea that was born in the hills of Afghanistan came to fruition. With all the little stories that we've had along the way of, anywhere from Sadiq to the mule to the villages.
Normally this is the part where I'm like, hey, what were your takeaways? What lessons did you learn, from your time? And really the answer is toilet paper, which is just a really odd answer to all of this, but
isn't it?
In all seriousness, I mean, I love the story. I think it's so cool. And Frank, I mean, I just have nothing but respect for you. As Jeff pointed out to me before and reiterated here, you didn't have to do what you did. Financially, I know you're more than comfortable through selling your businesses, but yet anyone who questions your patriotism, Jeff's got a whole lot of brothers that'll be right there
Amen.
With him to back you up, because again, that's just, you didn't have to do it and you did it, and it's every bit.
And I would do it again.
And that's what I love. That is what I love. So from your time in country together, I would love to hear your biggest takeaways. Again, what lessons do you carry with you? I mean, you've got kids. What are you teaching your kids based on your experiences there?
Cultural acceptance. We've been around. The military takes you everywhere. And in this case, I've been to all the places, sometimes by myself, obviously in Afghanistan and Iraq. But there's places that we've been with the family. So one thing that I teach my kids and the lessons I take away is that you're exposed to cultures around the world. And we as Americans sometimes aren't exposed, and many times aren't exposed to them, so we don't have an appreciation for the cultural differences that we all have, and that make us the world that we are. And we have to learn to be accepting of that, because not everybody is the same. We're not all the same cookie cutter by any means. And if I was to express it to my kids, and the lessons that were learned is that you really need to look twice, think twice, and understand. And I think my kids already do. They get that. They speak, different languages as well, just from being. They learn German. They learn Spanish. And in of itself, I think languages are the key to culture as well. Because when you learn language and you can interact with others, that's really important.
So what's really interesting about that is the business that I'm in is the mortgage business,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the Indian culture is very well known for being very, very hard bargaining people. And
That's a very violent word to say.
That's what?
I would use a harsher word.
Well, I want to be very respectful,
Right.
but no, their negotiation skills are just, they have expectations. And so, I would have, folks on my sales team, they'd come to me and they're like, oh man, these guys, they're beating me up. And exactly what you're just talking about, Jeff, understanding the culture. Now, I didn't necessarily understand it right away, but I knew enough through my exposure to a lot of other cultures to go study this a little bit, because you got to be curious. You got to seek to understand, right? And so what I really determined in very short order is that, you had to do two things. Number one, you had to set the ground rules right up front, because if they're not going to play on the same field that you're going to play on from the standpoint of negotiating. And, number two is you have to give in just a little bit. If you draw a hard line in the sand and say, I'm not going to move anywhere, I'm not moving, at all, I'm not giving in at all. Well, that tells them that you're not willing to work with
That's
them.
right. Deal's done.
And so, and I would explain this to people, and it was always funny. It would come back to me, that's racist. I'm like, that's not racist.
Called cultural understanding.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's actually the furthest thing, because you're seeking to understand their culture, and you're actually adapting to how they operate, they work. So, it's your story, but it triggered something for me
100%.
that I had to jump in on.
Yep.
I love your answer. So what about you, Frank?
I think you need to look at good in everything and everyone. There's good in everyone.
Everyone.
And there's good in every entity, every soul. So you need to seek the good in the opposite party. Just do your best and seek good in them.
So do you really, if I were to really challenge you on that, do you really believe that all the people that you came across in Afghanistan, there was good in each and every one of them?
I think there is good in each and all of us. Whether it's suppressed, whether it's majority or minority, there is good. And if we look for that, it's much more beneficial than just on the surface working with somebody. If you can find that inner soul that clicks, you can bond with, and then you can work with them. Yes. Same thing like you were mentioning with your Indian clients. Okay. I would say it's not as much as culture, it's just habit. In their mentality, in their culture, if I offer you something for a very low amount, its value is less. Doesn't matter if it's however expensive that item is, or it could be anything. But if somehow you can negotiate, or you're let's say we're negotiating, we're making a deal. We have to come to a set figure. You offer such, and I have to bring you down, regardless of how good that offer is. If I don't make you reduce your price, I haven't won.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how good the deal is. It's this property is worth $10 million. I'm giving it to you for $1 million cash. Why can't I have it for half of that? That's the mentality. So
Yeah, and that's what
in
I was
our-
talking about. You almost
yes,
have to
and there
come
so
off a little bit.
In both
Not that
in
this
Asian,
is a business show, but no, we're
Yeah.
talking
We
about
can
it.
do
So.
that.
in Southwest Asian, mostly Southwest Asian and West Asian, that's culture. If they don't, doesn't matter. It's hypothetical.
Right.
The value is hypothetical. Okay, they have to reduce whatever you're asking
Yes.
just for their own mental
Right.
state. That hey, I had him to come down.
Yeah, and that goes
that's
right
just-
back to the importance
that's
of
just
understanding
the culture,
culture. And
exactly.
It is.
It doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah,
Nope.
It just is.
and they want to have the best deal on the planet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then another 5% off.
The
when you're
expectation
done
of
closing, after you've closed, he's gonna ask for another 2 to 5% on the side.
But again, that's the culture.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it wrong. It's
Yeah.
just that's the way it is.
They're hard to work with. Yeah,
Don't worry, I was working with an Indian gentleman that wanted to buy some of our product,
Mhm.
and Frank started off and went down at least 2-3 days of back and forth with this guy. Frank knows how to culturally
Sure.
work through these issues. Insert me. I'm not very good at it.
No, you're right to the point.
No, I'm
You're
right. I'm
surprised
like,
to be
hey,
done with it.
here it is, done. Here's my line. I'm not moving, whatever. Well, Frank had already taken him to that point, and now he thinks he's going to work me over and get me down that extra little spot. And I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to make the change. I'm asking Frank. I'm like, why is this guy doing this? I thought you already agreed on what they were going to do. And Frank's like, see, it's the next stage of it, right? It's that next,
Mhm.
and you just if you don't
You
understand,
have to be prepared to walk
yeah,
away.
You
Yes.
have to be exactly right.
yes,
And you know what? We did walk away, and I haven't heard back in weeks. That doesn't mean that next week there won't be a phone call
Exactly.
because it's a commodity and they need it.
Mhm.
There's a paper shortage.
Well, man, that interesting turn. I didn't really expect to go there in this one, but
Yeah.
So okay,
By the way, you brought that up.
I did bring that up.
Yeah.
That's true. So carry the load. Jeff, you're not as familiar with carry the load, but you will be when I'm done with you.
Excellent.
Frank, I want you. I want to tell you all about it as well. Even outside of this. But one of the things about carry the load, it was founded by two friends of mine now, two Navy SEALs who. And it was really born out of anger. It was born out of anger because they continued to lose friends overseas. And, America, in our naive nature as a society, did not understand really what was happening over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so when Memorial Day would come around, people just didn't know. Really, it goes back to some of that not naive, but ignorance. I mean, pure ignorance. People didn't understand what Memorial Day really truly was. So Clint and Stephen, really out of anger, began this movement that we now call Carry the Load. Well, Carry the Load is making sure that that the death of those that we served with, our loved ones, that their death was never in vain. And so it's very important in our world that we are constantly reminding ourselves of those who made the ultimate sacrifice so that we could enjoy, the freedoms that we hold dear. So I'm saying all of this because I want to ask each of you who you're carrying with you this day. So our tagline is, who are you carrying? And I'm curious to know about an individual that maybe collectively, individually, you and I lost a couple of guys that we served with. I want to know who you still carry with you to this day, and let's make sure that we're speaking their names while we're here.
Yeah. Ray Mendoza.
Ray Mendoza.
Big Ray. Yep.
Big Ray. Tell everybody about Big Ray.
He was a monster. He Ohio State wrestler. Backup Olympic heavyweight. Decided
First alternate on the
Yep.
95 U.S. Olympic team.
We went to IOC with him, and he was fearless, as he should be. He was just etched out of stone, brick building, if you will. Ray was inspiration for anybody, just because his his accolades, right, of what he'd already accomplished prior to even coming into the Marine Corps, and going through IOC, TBS, IOC, Todd, this with him. Even the instructors had admiration for him, and he was just he was fantastic. As Marines, I didn't serve with him, right? So I didn't serve with him when we left school. I think he went over to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And but his name preceded him everywhere. He went anywhere from his time as a lieutenant to his company command and such. And so Ray was killed in Ramadi, I believe, in 2006. I don't want to get the date wrong, but I just want to say that he was killed in Iraq. Let's just say that. And it was it's so terrible to hear those things, and it really breaks you up because of the somebody, right, and they mean so much to others, their family, and to the Marines that they serve, but then to those that have served with them or had gone through with them. I think we should never forget those individuals because they made the ultimate sacrifice, and Ray certainly did. And I know that all of his West Coast brethren, they climbed the mountain to be with him, and it's moving. It's very moving. So
yeah, and I've got a couple Ray Mendoza stories that that I would love to tell at another time.
Oh yeah,
but he and I were in we were both at 2-1 together, and that as big and as nasty as he could be if he needed to, I'll just say he was just as gentle of an individual. John. So Frank, what about you? Did you serve with anybody that you lost overseas?
Actually, there were 3 people. They were very good. One was also a Marine, a younger gentleman. He was he came over. I met him in Bagram. He was in logistics. Just recently married, had a young boy, and
what's his name?
Last name Ferris.
Okay.
He helped me out quite a bit in the beginning when we he was with me in Georgia for 3 weeks, and then from Georgia when we went to Al Udeid, he helped me throughout the whole thing. This whole ordeal, logistics of movement and everything. Really, really nice guy. Right now, my mind is kind of blocked, but he helped me quite a bit. He stayed in Afghanistan for 9 months. He'd been deployed twice. And young guy, very young guy, very, very super nice young guy. And they went out on a patrol, and then his vehicle got blown up. Another person who used to be my ex-employee's brother was in the same vehicle.
You're kidding.
Yeah, he got his right side blown up. He lost a leg and some fingers on the right-hand side. And his brother used to be was my employee. So both of these people that I knew were in one vehicle that got blown up. It's sad. It's sad. He was such a nice man. I mean, he would go out of his way, help you out, and just the charming personality. It's sad. It saddens you,
It's sad, but we're fortunate that there are people like Ray and Ferris that are willing,
yes,
to do these things for others.
And then first time I came in R&R, there were a whole lot of human remains in that flight. There were a lot of caskets. My heart just fell. I said, every one of these is a son, a husband, a father, a brother, sister. There were a lot of caskets. I mean, I was shocked how many caskets were coming in that one flight. It was so sad. Just it was you look at your life, you're like, here I am, I'm breathing, I'm next to a casket. I'm laying next to a casket, and there's a dead person in there that gave his life. It's hard to explain. And somebody you knew, I knew that gentleman. So he was such a good guy. And sometimes we say, I know a lot of people, why didn't this guy die instead of this guy? I wish it was this guy. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's just
why him?
Yeah,
Just,
why
that's a
him?
good
Just
person.
the good guy. And then there were two other brothers. Two brothers. They were in a very hot zone. One of them was a Rambo. The other one was very docile, down to earth. They had both enlisted. Both of them died within a week in the valley in Afghanistan.
God, that poor family.
Yeah, one of them, the second one, got up at night to go relieve himself. God knows how, got shot in the head in the dark from wherever a projectile came. The other one, gunfight. But you would think somebody get up in the valley at night, you're going to relieve yourself in the pitch dark that nobody can see anything. And that was his destiny. He got shot in the head.
And that's why it is ultra important that we continue to remember these people, because they made a difference.
Yeah, remember them, cherish their memories. Yeah.
Jeff, Frank, thank y'all very much for being here.
Thank you
This
for
is,
having us.
Thank you for having us.
It just I almost wish we had just no constraints on time, because I just my mind was going in so many different directions, so many things I want to talk to you about. But hey, thank y'all for being here. And
You're welcome.
Jeff, glad to have you in Texas, my friend.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. I absolutely love it every minute.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.